Rob Freund is coming in here, and I would consider him like the authority when it
I'm
comes to
scared.
all things legal, advertising, direct to consumer. He's had a lot to say about basically everything that is happening and rolling through the court cases, be it the class action lawsuit with David Protein, be it what's recently rolled out with MedV, what was wrong there. We feature his content a lot.
All the time.
The Comfort and Real Tree situation. We covered that last week. I think we need to bring him in here now and squeeze his brain for all the knowledge therein. Everyone, welcome to the show. Rob Freund, get in here, Rob. There he is. Rob, welcome to the show, my friend. Thanks for coming on here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to do it.
Rob, I've got a little bit of feedback kicking from your mic. Can you hear that as well, Colin, or is that just me?
Just a little fuzz, just a little buzz.
A little fuzz and buzz? Not really. Not really. I'm not sure what it is, but we're excited to have you nonetheless.
It sounds like you put on a back massager and you have it next to your mic right now.
I think so.
Which I could use. I could use a back massager right now.
I could use a back massage.
Yeah.
Especially with all that's happening in the world. Now we can't hear you at all, Rob, but we can hear the back massager.
What the heck? All right.
What the heck?
I don't know what's going on with the massager. Sorry, guys.
It's a little better now. I would say it's a little better.
All right, I'll hold it here.
Let's do it. Let's roll with
run it.
Rob.
All right.
I am a close follower of all that you tweet, my friend, because you seem to be the one who knows what all is legal and not that everyone is doing on the interwebs. And I would love to first just get your just from a foundational perspective here, brother. How did you get into this? How did you become like the man with the
You're
voice
the guy
and the knowledge of all that's happening on the interwebs, and continually rolling forth content there that we're all interested in and can help us? How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so my background is that I worked at a big firm for the first 6.5 years after law school here in LA. Firm's called Greenberg Traurig, and a lot of what I was doing was defending consumer class actions and false advertising cases. When I decided after that amount of time that staying at a big firm is not what I want to do, I left to start my own practice in 2019. And what I wanted to do was sort of get away from litigating and move towards helping clients avoid those sorts of cases in the first place through basically like compliance type work and related transactional stuff, drafting and reviewing contracts and things like that. And I wanted to focus on e-commerce and online advertising because that's the most interesting area to me. So, if I'm going to be spending a lot of time doing something, I'd rather have it be interesting than boring. This stuff is interesting to me.
Super.
And so part of what I do just as part of the job is like making sure I'm staying up on what's happening in the courts, what are the legal developments that would affect my clients in the e-commerce space. And so it's like, it's very easy to then repackage some of that into things that I think would be interesting for the Twitter sphere to take a look at. I used to make videos on Instagram. It takes a lot more effort to make a video than fire off a tweet. So out of laziness, I'm more active on Twitter now than anywhere else, but that's sort of how it came to be. And it turns out that people do tend to find the stuff interesting. And so it like feeds itself and is good for business development and all that.
Wow. Could you talk to us a little bit about Chris, it's MedV, right? It's MedV?
MedV.
Could you talk to us a little bit about what's going on there? I think you had a tweet originally about that, and I've been trying to follow and kind of hodgepodge put together my take on the story and kind of understand a little bit. I'd love to hear your perspective on everything, because apparently there's been some interesting things he was doing to scale that business.
Yeah. So I can't claim to be the most informed person on every aspect of what was going on. But I first, I think like most people, saw the New York Times article, and without even clicking on it, my first impression was like, all right, this is a guy who, according to the headline, generated $1 billion in revenue really fast in a unconventional way, and he wants to tell the New York Times like everything about how he made that happen. Like, why would you do that?
Why do that?
Like
That's a good point.
why would you attract, and what I mean is like, why would you attract that much scrutiny to
Sure.
your business practices? Like, even if your side of the street is entirely clean, you're just attracting attention, and for what? Like, you've made $1 billion. Like, what are you getting out of this? Like, just shut up. Was my first reaction. And then like naturally people were sort of taking a peek at, well, how is this possible? This is like an astounding revenue number. One guy using AI, what's the deal? And it turns out that a lot of the growth was driven through, unsurprisingly, affiliate marketing. And that's, how a lot of the telehealth space operates. And when you look at some of the content that affiliates of MedV were putting out, that was sort of the first thing that got widely reported, was like, there are affiliates putting out content that appears to be presented by physicians endorsing MedV and the products that you can purchase through MedV, and those physicians do not exist, and the testimonials and the endorsements are fake. That's like an obvious legal issue for any affiliate or an advertiser that uses affiliates, and it's not enough from a compliance perspective to say like, oh well, I don't know what my affiliates are doing. I have no control over what they do, and so like whatever they do, it's their problem. That's not how regulators look at it, and that's just not how it works. And then beyond that, people were digging into, what else has MedV been involved with? They're being sued currently by an affiliate network operator that says MedV owes them something like $1 million. That's not that crazy. Like, contract disputes are not that juicy, but that's pending.
Sure.
There's a class action against them for, again, based on what their affiliates were doing, for sending basically fraudulent emails into California, which violates California's anti-spam law. Had TCPA troubles. Those aren't that controversial either. Like, TCPA class actions are pretty common. But the gist of it seems to be a lot of the heat, so to speak, or attention has to do with like scaling really fast through affiliates that aren't always playing by the rules. That's what it looks like. Nothing's been, there have been no judgments. Nothing's been proven anywhere yet. But that's sort of what the hubbub is about. And then there's the FDA warning letter from February that, again, that's not a lawsuit, that's not an enforcement action, but it's a signal that, hey, regulators like the FDA are taking a close look at the telehealth industry, and MedV among others in particular.
Wow. Rob, from a marketer's perspective, and this is one of the reasons why I love your content and what you put out, is because you've got a totally different perspective on everything that I look at and what we do every day. From a marketer's perspective, a lot of times we'll kind of colloquially categorize things as either white hat or black hat. There are certain tactics where it's like,
gray hat.
That's but then there's a lot of times like, well, this one's a little gray hat. I mean, it's probably not best. You wouldn't want your mother or your grandmother to know that's how you're selling things, but maybe you legally get by it. Does that exist at all in from a legal person's perspective? Is there a such thing as gray hat, or is everything black and white, and one just actually needs to read the letter of the law and be able to discern?
Yeah, it's more the latter, what you talked about. Like, I think people have different definitions about what's black hat, and a lot of that is like, there's like a moral question there. Like, okay, this does comply with the law, but it's not like I'm saying this cures cancer when really I'm selling like just water. Like, there's something extreme like that, like selling a fake cancer cure, that I think most people would say that's a black hat practice, or like no shipping MRR stuff. Like pretty much everybody would agree. If you're going to call something black hat, that would be it. But from like a liability or exposure standpoint, sometimes that moral question doesn't matter. Like there can be a statute that you violate, whether in your estimation it's like a harmless violation, or you violate it just a little, or all the way black hat. At the end of the day, is always going to matter, depending on what we're talking about. Like for the subscription thing is a good example. Like if you're just enrolling people without any disclosures and like no notification, and people find out when they get their credit card bill, that's a violation. That could be a violation of California subscription law. So could like having a pre-checked box and everything else is buttoned up. And at the end of the day, like if you're facing a class action over something like that, the exposure that you have is going to be the same as to that claim. So my point is that like it may feel good to think like, well, this is at least I'm not that guy. At least I'm not doing the black hat stuff. But if what you care about is what does this mean for my business in terms of like potential risk, then that distinction can collapse.
Wow. I was going to talk to you exactly about the subscription stuff and bring that up later. We can go into that a little bit more, but I would be so curious. I mean, you've been in the industry for so long and you've probably seen some insane stuff. You don't have to name names or put down any brands. You can if you want to, if you're willing to.
Don't put anybody down.
What is some of the most egregious things? What is some of the most egregious things you've come across where you just see this and you're like, I cannot believe that they are doing this. This is unbelievable. And I mean, the MedV stuff is whatever, but I'm sure you've come across stuff in your career where it's like, I can't even believe that they would even ship this out.
Yeah, I mean, I have personally seen like the no ship stuff where there's just basically a website that purports to tell us something. Yeah, and like the stuff never goes out, and you're just like collecting the payments from whatever the sucker's credit cards until they figure it out. Like that's pretty bad. Other things that are like not quite as bad, it's not uncommon, especially I think for younger brand owners, to just sort of make up like entirely make up customer reviews and testimonials. And then like when you talk to them about it, they're like, oh, I can't, like everyone does this. I thought everybody just put like a 5-star Trustpilot badge, when that's like not true. Or like I've heard that from people. Like I thought I can just say, trusted by 20,000 people when I launch, because that's social proof. It's like, yeah, that's social proof, but like it's deceptive social proof, things like that. Like that's again, maybe not like that's not I'm selling a fake cancer cure morally culpable, but it's still surprising. It's surprising to me that others are surprised to learn that that's really not something that you can do if you care about running a compliant business.
Wow.
Rob, whenever these class action lawsuits or whenever any suits come up, I just always believe the brand, or I just hope that hey, everything's above board, and this sometimes to me, just maybe this is coming from the 80s, but I just feel like we live in a suit happy culture. Everybody can sue everybody. Everybody's looking for a cheap buck. There are ambulance chaser situations, where, it's obviously they're just looking for, I just want to fork thousands of dollars out of your pocket and save yourself the headache. Give me a check. I mean, do you find that there are some of these, they're obviously bogus. Some of these class action lawsuits are things that you see from afar, come across your desk, or is it more on the other side? Like, no, man, if something comes up, it's really serious. Of course, it's always serious. But I just have this tendency to think like, this is probably really bogus. I mean, does that exist?
Yeah, I think it's more like a lot of what you see, there are legitimate violations of some law, but it's like ticky-tack stuff that's where you're wondering like, what's the harm here? Like, are we really addressing consumer harm when we hit the same business with like ADA website compliance lawsuits like 5 or 6 times a year. Like the visually impaired guy who's shopping for sunglasses, I don't know that that's a case that's about like helping out the consumer. Like, I'm not sure. And things like that, or like the pixel tracking cases. Like, I understand that people care about privacy, et cetera, but like I think that we've gotten used to, you log on a website, something's going to be sent to Google Analytics or Meta or whatever. Like, that's the nature of shopping, in my opinion. So, yeah. But you know, we elect people who write laws that are able to be exploited in ways that maybe the people who wrote them don't expect. So you end up with some of these categories of lawsuit like that, where it's like, what harm are we really solving by having these things? On the other hand, like, there are ones that I think are legitimate. Like, even if from a brand owner's perspective, like maybe the fake discount ones I talk about, like, I'm sympathetic to the idea that, you know, maybe there's not really that much harm there if somebody thought they were getting a discount, but ultimately they paid whatever the quoted price was for the product. Where's the harm? I think that, you know, to some extent, the flip side of that is we either want to have a fair marketplace where people can compete without feeling like they have to tell white lies or worse to customers, or we don't. And like, I think that a lot of the class actions we see are based in trying to achieve good goals that were written into law. Sometimes they get exploited by lawyers who don't really care about that goal. So I that's a long way of saying, like, it's the rare case that's just frivolous, where it's like made up and like there's nothing to it. But there's a range of like, is this something that we should really be using the courts for or not?
Yeah.
Interesting.
You see a lot of stuff in your career at this point, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of brands in a multitude of ranges. Could you talk a little bit about, you know, if a brand's listening to this, they're between $5 and call it $20 million. What's something, you know, a checklist or something they should be looking out for, where it's not necessarily they are intentionally trying to do something malicious. It's just by, you know, the fact that they really weren't, you know, checking their T's and dotting their I's on that. Could you talk a little bit about what brands should be looking out for?
Sure. There's a few things there. And I would say generally, like, it's good to familiarize yourself with what the FTC expects in terms of like general truth in advertising principles. But regulators are often not the most immediate source of exposure. There are many more consumer class actions filed than FTC enforcement actions or state AG cases. And so if you pay attention to the trends of what sorts of cases are being filed, you can stay ahead of areas that are more likely to become problems. So right now, and this has been true for a while, it's the pricing cases and the subscription stuff have been hot for a long time, and they seem to be increasing in the volume that they're filed. So I think that those are two areas to take a look at. I'm sure it would be pretty easy to find tweets of mine about either one of those. But I mean, there's so many things. But I would say that another good idea for basically any e-commerce brand is to look over your terms of sale, or whatever you're calling the document that customers agree to before they complete a purchase, and consider whether, usually I would say this is a good idea, consider whether you want to have an arbitration clause with a class action waiver in there. That's just generally good practice, because what that allows you to do is basically say, like, hey, this person with a $10 claim, they don't get to group that together with a million other people and turn it into a $10 million case. They have to do this one at a time, and it's rarely worth pursuing a $10 case. Sometimes it is, but it's usually not. And what a lot of times, what you'll see in the overwhelming, like 90+% of the cases I tweet about, if you go to that brand's website, whoever is being targeted, you won't find an arbitration clause that is written and then presented in a way that courts will enforce. And the reason for that is, like, there are categories of case that are like law firms find the violation and then they find the plaintiff. That's why you'll see ads on Instagram from a law firms. They're like, "Did you buy from whatever brand?
Right.
You might get $2,000 or whatever. Please hit us up." That's a law firm that has done the research on a website, found a violation that they think would make for a good case. Now they need to find a consumer who like fits the case. And as they're doing that, if they go through a website and see a brand that has an enforceable class action waiver, the odds that they're going to continue to pursue that are drastically reduced. They'll just move on to the next website where that's not going to be a hurdle. So I think that's really the first line of defense for any e-commerce brand, is to have an enforceable class action waiver with arbitration in their terms sale. That's kind of like an in the weeds point, but it's a big one.
Gold. That's
I love
gold,
that.
man.
That's gold. And then you could probably, I mean, if you're running one, just run it where you'll talk directly to Rob instead. Just throw that into the actual terms. Just direct all emails to Rob instead of myself. That's a good point.
Rob, we appreciate you making the time and coming on here. But before you go, brother, you've got to talk about AI inside of ads and use of AI generated video, etc. What are the no-nos? What's everybody like in trouble on if they're actually doing? Can you give us like some clear 1, 2, 3 X-nays that this is okay, etc.?
Sure. So I think the way to frame it is that AI and like UGC style content, the laws apply the same to AI generated content as they do to any other like traditional content. And what I mean is there are 2 points. One is that the FTC requires that any testimonial or endorsement, even if it's paid, has to reflect the actual experiences and honest beliefs of whoever is giving the endorsement. If you have an AI generated avatar, that like definitionally cannot give an endorsement that is lawful. So if you have someone, that doesn't mean that they can't appear in your ads in like UGC style ads. Like if Monster Energy and I want to use an AI person, I can have that person say like, Monster has 200 milligrams of caffeine and 0 grams of sugar if it's Monster Zero or something. That's not an endorsement. That's like, I'm talking about facts about this product. But if that AI person then is like, I used to drink Red Bull and switched over and this powers my workouts, then that's an endorsement. And you can't have that unless you make it abundantly clear, like unmistakably clear, like, hey, this is not a real person. This is an AI person. And I think that is, I mean, there have been cases filed about that. I'm sure there will be more, not just consumer cases, but competitors. Like if your brand is not doing that and you see a competitor that's taking up part of taking market share from you by using all this AI stuff, you potentially have a Lanham Act claim against them. And there have been examples of that filed. The other thing to pay attention to is there's a New York law that goes into effect in June that requires a clear disclosure of any AI generated person in any advertisement. So if you run ads that appear in New York, you are subject to that. And it's worth reading about what you need to do to comply with that. But it's basically like, if you ask yourself, like, am I telling the truth? And this sounds so basic, but like it is true that like 90% of compliance questions can be answered by like, this potentially misleading in some way to the person who sees this ad.
Sure.
If the answer is yes, then like it's worth taking a second look at, like,
sure,
at least.
Wow. Rob, man, that is sage advice, my friend. And I hope everyone will go and follow Rob on X, go and get his content, hire him, pay him as much money as you need to get him on the phone and protect you. He's a watchdog, but now having talked to you, Rob, I consider you a gentle shepherd who's looking out for all of us. We appreciate you coming on the show. We look forward to having you back, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.